This is Amy Vanderbosch. Thank you for joining me for this two-part presentation on our math program at Telluride Elementary School. I like to start this presentation by asking people how they themselves felt about math growing up. Math can bring up a lot of emotions in people. Think for a moment about your own relationship with math and give yourself a rating in your mind. If I were to rate my own experiences in high school, I would give myself a 2 on this scale. It wasn't until I had been teaching elementary school for several years that I became interested in how children can best learn math, and over time my love of the subject grew the more I studied it. Over the past few years, you have probably heard about the Common Core state standards. This is a complicated subject and can be controversial. I often have parents ask me, what is the Common Core, and why have most schools adopted these standards? Here's an animation about that.
Like it or not, life is full of measuring sticks. How smart we are, how fast we are, how well we can, compete. But up until now, it's been pretty hard to tell how well kids are competing in school and how well they're going to do when they get out of school. We like to think that our education system does that. But when it comes to learning what they really need to be successful after graduation, is a girl in your neighborhood being taught as much as her friend over in the next one? Is a graduating senior in, say, St. Louis as prepared to get a job as the graduate in Shanghai? Well, it turns out the answer to both of these questions is no. Because for years, states have been setting different standards for what students should know and be able to do at each grade level. That's making it too hard to know if our kids are really doing well enough overall, and if they can really compete for a job someday. What we really need are clear goals. That's where the Common Core state standards come in. They're like a total sea change in education. Consistent, strong, clear benchmarks for English language arts and math. Here's how it works. You can think of kindergarten through 12th grade like a giant staircase. Each step is a skill your child needs to learn before stepping up to the next one. But right now, too many kids aren't really confident with like 2 plus 2 before they have to move on to 2 times 2. We need more focus on the skills that help them move up the stairs, or they can slip up and fall behind. And there's another problem. What if everyone's stairs were made at different heights? Well, here we go again. They are. So, a boy in Seattle who's rocking an A in English literature could be getting a C on his Chicago friend's staircase. Oops. We need to create consistent steps in education too. So first, each standard creates a landing on the staircase, a stop along the way as your child heads toward high school graduation. Each stop is a chance for every parent and teacher to focus on the skills their students are supposed to know at that step, no matter the zip code, language, or race. And more importantly, each standard makes sure all students are learning what they need to know to get to graduation and beyond. Because something like counting to 100 leads to understanding dollars and cents, which eventually leads to understanding how to manage a budget. Secondly, the standards are consistent from school to school, and they match up against international standards too. Now we know how we're doing compared to just about everyone. So even though local communities will still design their own curriculum, with the same rules, everybody can compete on the same kind of staircase. But standards aren't learning. That's why we need teachers, parents, and students to help make that happen. By working together to help kids meet these standards. The world's getting more and more competitive every day. But now, when our kids get to the top of their staircase, they can have way more options on where their life goes from there. Clear goals, confident, well-prepared students. That's the Common Core state standards.
The state of Colorado has adopted the Common Core standards, and we are expected to prepare your children for what we believe they will be required to do in their future. Though with the way technology is affecting the world every decade, we don't really know exactly what that future will look like. So we aim to make them good, flexible thinkers with problem-solving and reasoning skills, the ability to keep learning, and the ability to work well and communicate clearly with others. The first page of your packet is a summary for parents about the Common Core. About 5 years ago, when the Common Core state standards were being introduced, we came to realize that the math program we had adopted in 2001, Investigations, was not planning at that time to update to the Common Core, and we were going to need something new. We formed a committee that met over the course of about 18 months to study the educational research and to review and audit several programs that were fully updated. We chose Bridges in Mathematics, published by the Math Learning Center, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to mathematics education research. The materials are written and created by experienced teacher researchers. The 8 mathematical practices mentioned in this slide are an important part of the Common Core math standards, and there is an explanation of what they are on the second page of your packet. I have come to find out that many people confuse mathematics with arithmetic. What's the difference between arithmetic and mathematics? My favorite quick answer is, arithmetic is to mathematics as spelling is to writing. The dictionary definitions of these two bodies of learning are as follows. Arithmetic, the branch of mathematics that deals with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, or the use of numbers in calculations. Mathematics is the abstract science of number, quantity, and space. My memory of my own elementary school math education is solely of arithmetic. We learned to add, subtract, line numbers up in columns, and carry the 1. We did packets of worksheets to perfect our ability to perform these procedures out of context. What is your memory of your elementary math classes when you think about this distinction? Many of you are younger than I am, so math education may have already been improving by the time you were there. In elementary school, we do have to focus on arithmetic quite a bit. These days, we think of this as number sense. There's a page in your packet that describes this term. We are working to teach children to make sense of number relationships in a way that will benefit them when they grow into other areas of math, more than if we solely teach them rote procedures, like traditional column addition, or subtraction with carrying or borrowing, stacking multiplication, or long division. There is nothing wrong with those procedures. They're very efficient, and your children will learn them. But by the time they learn them, they will have a much better understanding of what the shortcuts in the procedures mean. In a course I took about math education reform, I read a paper called The Mathematician's Lament by Paul Lockhart. He begins the paper with a story that uses music as a metaphor for teaching math. He imagines a world in which music education is compulsory, and the curriculum is being written not by musicians, but by policymakers. They believe that to achieve in the field of music, students must spend years studying how to correctly notate on sheet music the notes, lines, dots, bars, and signatures that musicians use to write music. Students are not allowed to actually make music until they have shown proficiency in the written form. Music is not played, listened to, or appreciated until much later, perhaps in college or graduate school. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? We are trying to move away from teaching math as just a language of written procedures and formulas that lead to one correct answer. Instead, we are encouraging children to go ahead and make music. They will learn the operations, notations, procedures, and formulas as they need them, and they will learn them in context. Bridges has kind of a different approach to fact fluency. This is an area where opinions are many, and there are some changes happening. We want students to become fluent with the basic math facts, just as they work on sight words to build their fluency with reading. In prior years, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division tables were expected to be memorized by rote. I can remember doing reams of worksheets and taking timed tests. Can you? I was never very fast. Through the Bridges program, math facts are taught alongside the development of number sense. Children learn intuitive strategies that emphasize efficiency and flexible thinking. The last 2 pages in your packet list the major strategies that we teach. We do still use timed assessment occasionally to track your child's growth, but the pressure is kept to a minimum. Bridges relies on visual models that encourage students to link their thinking to the benchmark or friendly quantities that organize our number system, such as 5, 10, multiples of 5 and 10, 50s, hundreds, and so on. This is a list of the visual models we will explore in the next few slides. In kindergarten, Bridges begins with a 5 frame to build a strong sense of fiveness. This is great because the children have the convenient tool of 5 fingers on one hand, and almost all kindergartners are 5. So before their last birthday, they know that they were 4, and they know that on their next birthday they will be 6. It all makes sense to them. Next, they move on to the 10 frame to see quantities of 5 and more, to build an understanding of quantities up to 10. Then they move on to 10 and more, using a double 10 frame to understand the teen numbers. These number frames are a versatile tool that we use in many ways so that children can build a deep understanding of quantities and their relationships to each other. Another tool students use in the primary years is called the number rack. Each child builds his or her own number rack and uses it to demonstrate, model, and problem solve. The red and white beads are grouped in 5s to reinforce those benchmark numbers 5, 10, 15, and 20. Another visual Bridges uses a lot is tally marks. Children start out building numbers with craft sticks, learning that the 5th tally mark closes the gate to signify a group of 5. The students also use the written form of tally marks to help them visualize quantities. When children are ready to explore place value, they bundle sticks into groups of 10 to build numbers with 10s and 1s. In 2nd grade, base 10 pieces are introduced as a model for understanding quantities with 1s, 10s, and hundreds. In the next segment of this video, we will see some footage of some 2nd graders using base 10 pieces to solve a problem. Please join me for part 2.